Hello friends, hello Kazan, hello Yoshkarala, hello Cheboksar, hello the international service. Friends, I am truly delighted that week after week we are diving deep into these 7 essential themes of the Transformation Project, thoroughly discussing the main areas of our lives that impact our personal growth and development. And I sincerely hope that by witnessing how God transforms the lives of others through the practical application of these transformative principles, we will find inspiration. And today we will discuss a sensitive topic. We will talk about finances. You might be surprised to learn that Jesus Christ spoke about finances more than about heaven and hell. Why is that? Why are finances so important to God? They are particularly important because they reveal the true state of our hearts more than anything else we might express or demonstrate in our daily lives. This is critically important, so I will emphasize it again. Nothing reveals the true state of our heart quite like our attitude towards finances. Yeah, that's true. In fact, it is. How we relate to our finances reveals who we truly are and reflects the condition of our heart. And so, God desires first and foremost for us to put our hearts in proper order, and for that purpose, we must wisely manage our finances. That's right. Secondly, God also wants us to maintain order and structure in our finances, because He desires our abundance and prosperity in this crucial area of life. This way, we can ensure we have enough resources to meet our needs and are rich in every good work, enabling us to help others and contribute positively to the world around us. And here we can confidently say a resounding Amen. Today, we will delve into what could be described as the strangest and most incomprehensible parable that Jesus ever shared with His followers. We will thoroughly examine it, and I will share some key principles before we dive deeper into the intricacies of finances. So, Luke 16, starting from the first verse, is the most incomprehensible parable. Let's go. He also said to His disciples, "There was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So, there is a rich man who owns everything, and there is a steward who turned out to be not entirely honest. So he called him," the second verse says, "and said to him, 'What is this I hear about you?' The master said further, 'Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward.' Verse 3, "Then the steward said within himself, 'What shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig, I am ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses.' And here's what he does next. He calls in all his master's debtors and inquires about how much money they owe him. One says 100 measures of oil, and he replies, 'Sit down and write 50. And he asks another, 'How much do you owe?' He says, 'I need 100 measures of wheat.' And then he instructs, 'Please write down 80 instead.' And what does he do? He comes to the painful realization that he will soon be thrown out of this house, but in his quest for acceptance and a chance to find mercy, he chooses to show kindness and mercy to these people. He attempts to earn their favor by demonstrating kindness to these individuals now, while he still possesses some rights and privileges that he can leverage. Do you know what's interesting here? What's particularly interesting is what is written in verse 8, which says, 'So the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly.' Notice that he doesn't praise his dishonesty, but rather that he acted very shrewdly. He specifically praises his shrewdness. For the sons of this world, Jesus says, are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light." And in verse 9, it says, "And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home." And here perhaps is the key thought of this profound parable. And it's not entirely focused on finances alone, but I want to pause briefly here because Jesus speaks about the eternal rewards that await us in the afterlife. And he talks about shrewdness. And he offers praise for the clever and shrewd steward who demonstrates wisdom suited for his time, for this particular age, and for this world. Recognizing the challenges that await him, he makes an effort to gather support from others, hoping that they might show him some compassion or mercy in the near future. Christ's message here is what? He says, "Friends, you are all responsible stewards of the gifts I have entrusted to you. And one day, you could unexpectedly lose everything in an instant as you transition into eternity, changing your existence forever. And when you finally arrive in the eternal dwellings, your ultimate reward will be determined by the choices you made with money during your time here on earth." What choices and actions have you made with your life while living here on earth? What have you chosen to do with all the things that were entrusted to you during your time here on earth? The eternal reward we receive is determined by our actions here, including how we use our money. Are you with me? Therefore, the attitude towards money is very important here, in fact, because it also determines what? Something that occurs in the future ultimately determines something in eternity. That is why Christ praises him for his shrewdness that he prepared ahead of time. And Christ tells us, friends, prepare in advance. The attitude towards money is very important, he says. And he says in verses 10 and 11, "He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. In other words, just look, I will read verse 11 and attempt to explain it clearly. He says, therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? He says, who will truly grant you real wealth and prosperity if you have not been faithful and responsible in handling the simple things such as earthly matters and money? And he says, look, this is so important. If you want God to entrust you with something, to give you something valuable, to give you something important, money is not the most important thing in life. If you are unable to manage this aspect of your life, then who will truly provide you with real wealth? He says in verse 12, and if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? And then he says, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and wealth. You cannot serve God and mammon. Therefore, there are several important lessons we should take away from this insightful parable in order to learn and grow. At the very least, I will begin by outlining what not to do with your hard-earned money. But first, allow me to reiterate what we can learn here from this insightful parable. We learn here not that the man acted wrongly. Jesus does not commend him for his dishonesty, but instead praises him for his cleverness and shrewdness. And you know, we can always learn something valuable from different kinds of people, right? After all, we can learn valuable traits and important lessons from a diverse range of different people throughout our lives. They don't need to be perfect in all aspects. For example, if you require assistance or something specific from another person, maybe a plumber, you don't necessarily need to inquire whether they, for instance, have read the Bible. What truly matters in that situation is whether they possess the skills or knowledge to fix the issue you need repaired at that particular moment. Therefore, everyone has something to offer. Sometimes it's even non-believers, but they possess qualities we can learn from. So this particular person, even if they happen to be wrong or unjust in their actions or beliefs, we can still learn valuable principles of insight and understanding from them. For instance, they can see ahead and suddenly they realize something and their values change. When we truly understand what lies ahead for us in the future and what eternity holds, we naturally begin to change our values and our attitudes towards wealth. And his values began to change as well. At that moment, he understood that if he loses everything now, what could he possibly do? Friends, if eternity awaits you, how should you regard what you have been entrusted with for a time? And this is precisely what we should not do with money. There are a few important things we definitely should not do. First, be mindful not to waste your hard-earned money or carelessly throw it around. Okay? Let's understand for ourselves. We are stewards. We have been entrusted with it. This money we have is not our money. You could think, how can it not belong to me? I received my salary today and I signed for it, so it definitely belongs to me. Yeah, but if we look from a Christian perspective, our life is even given to us temporarily. Life's breath is given to us for a limited time. Everything around us is given to us temporarily, so we should manage it wisely. And God is like the figure who will ultimately ask for an account of how we managed our lives and resources. So don't waste money. Don't be unfaithful stewards. Let's learn to manage properly what God has entrusted to us. That's the first. Second, do not love money. Verse 13 tells us you cannot love God and you cannot love mammon. It's truly impossible to genuinely give your heart to two things simultaneously. Money can be a troublesome master, yet it serves well as a helper. If the situation is reversed, if money serves your needs, that's truly fantastic. However, if you serve only money as your master, then that presents a significant problem. That will certainly become a significant problem for your heart. If money is your master and dictates your emotions, then without it, you may find yourself losing your mood, becoming angry, and struggling to live a normal life. That's a problem. Or the opposite, when money appears, something rustles in your pocket and you immediately look down on others. That's a problem. Money controls you. On the contrary, you should control money. You can easily part with it when necessary, especially for the greater good and well-being of others. It's important to meet certain needs and help others effectively while ensuring that you do not compromise your own well-being. The key is to manage this balance properly and once again, prioritize managing it effectively. And what actions should you avoid? You definitely shouldn't waste your hard-earned money, which is why budgeting is so important. I believe we'll delve into that topic in our sermon today. You can't love money. You shouldn't give your heart to money. You also shouldn't place your trust in money. Friends, please do not think for a moment that money alone guarantees us safety or secures our future in unpredictable times. It's important to remember that true security comes from many sources. The Bible reminds us numerous times that we often live as if our time here is endless and will last forever with us. There are many stories of people who fell so in love with money and trusted their lives to it that when they lost money, they lost their lives. During severe financial crises, some individuals tragically jumped in front of trains, taking their own lives due to overwhelming despair. Because money became much more than just money, more than just a means. For those individuals, it became their entire life, deep meaning, and their master. They entrusted their future to uncertain prospects, and when the money disappeared, they realized there was no viable future ahead, leaving them uncertain about how to live their lives. So don't put your trust in money. It's certainly beneficial when you possess it. It feels wonderful, and you may experience a boost in confidence, but allow the depth of your trust to rest in God, not in money. The Apostle Paul stated he has learned to live both in poverty and abundance. My confidence remains unshakable no matter what. Yes, sometimes having no money is quite tough, but that doesn't mean I'll start worrying or being afraid. I will still trust God. Amen. The next and last thing I will say today is, don't expect money to satisfy you. Very often, people believe their happiness lies in money, thinking that money will fulfill them. However, the Bible clearly states, particularly in the book of Proverbs, that when we harbor a misguided attitude towards money, falsely believing it will bring us true satisfaction, it ultimately never fulfills us, leading us to constantly desire more and more. A person is shaped by their heart and experiences. If we are unable to find genuine happiness in our present circumstances and moments, simply by attaining a new level of financial sufficiency or stability, it does not necessarily guarantee that we will discover true happiness alongside that achievement. And that's precisely why there is never truly enough of what we desire or seek. Learn to be grateful. Learn to be happy here and now, wherever you are. We've discussed a few things you should not do with money. So what should we do with money? We'll delve deeper into this topic during the upcoming sermon, so I kindly ask for your undivided attention.